Someone was stunned. After listening to what you said, they never expected to hear it. They had convinced themselves that you had gone quiet for good, that whatever you once felt had faded into silence, that the door between the two of you had finally closed, and then, when they least expected it, your words reached them, and in a single moment, everything they thought they understood came undone. So stay with me and listen closely. Because what you are about to hear is not just a story about words spoken into the air. It is the story of how something you said, something you may not have even realized, carried so much weight, traveled further than you ever imagined, found the one person it was meant to find, and left them completely stunned. For a long time, you held so much inside. There were things you wanted to say and never did. Feelings you carried quietly, because the timing never felt right, or because pride got in the way, or because you were tired of reaching out, only to be met with silence. You learned to keep your truth tucked away where no one could use it against you. You learned to protect yourself by saying less, and slowly you became someone who felt deeply, but spoke rarely. But here is what you may not have understood. Words have weight. Even the ones you think no one is listening to, even the ones you say quietly to yourself, to a friend, to the universe, to no one at all. The truth you finally allowed yourself to speak did not simply disappear. It carried energy, and that energy went looking for the very person it belonged to. Don't skip, because this is where the story turns. Somewhere, this person had built a wall around themselves, where you were concerned. They had told themselves a story, and they had repeated it so many times that they had started to believe it. They told themselves that you had moved on, that you did not care anymore, that whatever existed between the two of you was a thing of the past, better left untouched. It was easier that way. Believing you had stopped. Feeling anything gave them permission to stop. Hoping and hope, after disappointment, can feel like the most dangerous thing in the world. So they guarded themselves. They stayed busy. They filled their days with distractions, and their nights with anything that kept them from thinking about you. On the surface, they looked like someone who had let go completely. They wanted everyone, including themselves, to believe it. But underneath that wall, something was still alive. A question they never answered. A feeling they never fully buried. A version of the story they were too afraid to consider. Because considering it would mean admitting they might have been wrong all along. And then, your words found them. Maybe they heard something you said directly. Maybe it reached them through someone else. Maybe it came to them in a moment of stillness, when their defenses were down. The way does not matter. What matters is that it landed. And the second it did, they froze. Don't skip, because what they felt in that moment is the heart of all of this. The first thing they felt was shock. Pure, disarming shock, because what they heard did not match the story they had been telling themselves. They had spent so long believing you felt nothing, that hearing the truth nearly knocked the breath out of them. Everything they had used to protect themselves suddenly had a crack, running straight through it. The second thing they felt was confusion. If this was true, then so much of what they believed had been wrong. The version of events they had clung to, the assumptions they had built their peace upon, the reasons they had given themselves for staying away. All of it was suddenly in question. And when the foundation of a story starts to shake, everything built on top of it begins to tremble too. And the third thing they felt, the one they tried hardest to push away, was something far more dangerous than shock or confusion. Hope, because your words did not just inform them, they reopened something. They reminded this person of a feeling they had worked so hard to forget. And once a feeling like that wakes up, it does not go quietly back to sleep. Don't skip, because the hours and days that followed were anything but quiet. This person could not stop thinking about what you said. They replayed it again and again, turning it over in their mind, examining it from every angle. At first they tried to dismiss it. They told themselves it did not mean what it seemed to mean. They searched for reasons to doubt it, because doubting it would let them keep the walls standing. But no matter how hard they tried, the words refused to leave them alone. There were moments, in the middle of their day, when it would suddenly return, stopping them in their tracks. There were nights when they lay awake, staring into the dark, unable to quiet their mind. The thing about truth is that once you have heard it, you cannot unhear it. It settles into you. It works on you quietly, even when you are trying to ignore it, and that is exactly what was happening to them. Slowly, the story they had told themselves began to fall apart. They started to remember things differently. Moments they had filed away as proof that you did not care suddenly looked different in this new light. Conversations they had misread, silences they had misunderstood, distance they had mistaken for indifference. One by one, the pieces they thought they understood began to rearrange themselves into a picture they had never allowed themselves to see, and with that, a painful realization began to take shape. They had been wrong about you. Maybe not entirely, but enough that it changed everything. They had spent all this time believing a version of you that was never true, and in doing so, they had pushed away something that may have been real all along. Don't skip, because this is where the regret begins to surface. As the truth sank in, this person had to sit with something uncomfortable. The realization of how much may have been lost to a simple misunderstanding, to pride, to fear, to assumptions that were never checked. They started to wonder how things might have been different if they had known sooner, if they had asked instead of assumed, if they had stayed instead of pulling away. That kind of reflection is heavy. It brings a quiet ache. The kind that comes from understanding that some things could have been avoided, and for a while, that weight pressed down on them. They felt the sting of time that had passed. They felt the discomfort of having been so certain about something they had gotten so wrong. But here is what you need to understand, and it is important. That discomfort is not a bad sign. That ache is not the end of the story. Because a person only feels regret over something they still care about. They only replay your words over and over, if those words still matter. They only lie awake thinking about you, if you were never truly gone from their heart in the first place. The very pain they are feeling is proof of how alive that connection still is. Don't skip, because the walls are starting to come down. Little by little, the defenses this person built began to weaken. Not all at once. Healing and softening rarely happen all at once, but the certainty they once held, the certainty that they had let go completely, was no longer there. In its place came something far more honest and far more human. Uncertainty, longing. The slow return of a feeling they thought they had buried for good. They began to feel the pull again. That quiet, undeniable pull toward you, that they had spent so long resisting, and the more they tried to resist it now, the more obvious it became that it had never actually left. There were moments when they came close to reaching out. They thought about what they might say, they imagined how the conversation might go. They picked up the courage, then set it back down, picked it up again, then hesitated. Because reaching out means becoming vulnerable. It means admitting they were wrong. It means risking the very disappointment they have spent so long protecting themselves from. So they hover at the edge of it, wanting to speak, afraid to speak, wanting to close the distance, afraid of what it might cost them, caught between the pull of their heart and the fear of their pride. Don't skip, because this is where your part in the story becomes clear. You may be wondering what all of this means for you. You may be tempted to chase, to explain more, to say even more in the hope of speeding things along. But here is the truth. You have already done the most important thing. You spoke. You let your truth out, and your words reached the place they were always meant to reach. The seed is already planted. Now it needs time to take root. What this person needs now is not more pressure. It is space to sit with what they have heard. Space to let the truth do its quiet work. Space to come to their own realization without feeling pushed, because a decision made under pressure rarely lasts. But a decision someone arrives at on their own, after honestly facing the truth, is the kind of decision that holds. So resist the urge to chase, resist the urge to fill the silence with more words. Trust that what you said was enough because it was. You planted something real, and real things grow in their own time. The most powerful thing you can do now is hold your peace, and let your truth keep working on them, quietly from the inside. Don't skip, because the shift that is coming is bigger than you think. This person is not the same as they were before they heard your words. Something has changed in them, and it cannot be undone. The story they told themselves has cracked, and the truth has begun to take its place. The walls they built are no longer holding, and the feeling they tried so hard to forget has woken up and refused to go quiet. Right now, they are still wrestling with it. Still caught between pride and longing, between fear and hope, between the comfort of the old story and the pull of the truth. But every day that passes, the old story loses a little more of its grip, and every day the pull toward you grows a little harder to deny. The walls did not come down all at once, but they are coming down. The silence that once stood between you is no longer empty. And the distance that once felt permanent is beginning to feel like something that can actually be crossed. So here is what you need to hold on to as this chapter closes. Reached the one person it was meant to reach, and it stunned them in a way they never saw coming. It shook loose the story they had been hiding behind. It reminded them of a feeling they thought was gone, and it set something in motion that none of their walls can stop now. They are still processing it. They are still gathering their courage. But the truth has already taken hold. The realization is already forming, and the choice they are slowly working toward is one that nobody else can make for them, and one that nobody else can prevent. The journey that seemed to have gone silent is quietly stirring back to life. Your words did their work. The wall has cracked. The feeling has returned, and just beyond this moment of hesitation, a decision is taking shape that could change everything. So don't skip, because sometimes the most important thing you ever say is the thing you almost kept to yourself. And sometimes, when the right person finally hears it, the silence between two souls finally begins to break.